Hello to you on the pleasant Sunday it is. Today is the 11th of November 2018. As I'll welcome you heartily to the program Face the Nation. On today's edition, I am Eustace Victor Jones. Facing the nation today is the mayoress of the municipality of Freetown, Yvonne Aki-SAWYERR. Now, meanwhile, for those of you at home who are watching, you could drop your comments on our Facebook page at FTN News. Visit our YouTube channel also. Search for Freetown Television Network. For those of you who are using the satellite channels, search for Freetown Television Satcom. Similarly, iTelevision. This is FTN on channel 35. I have the pleasure now to welcome. I want to use the title, but I'm tempted not to. The program has just commenced. Maybe probably I'll have the privilege later too. But for the sake of posterity, I say, her worship. Welcome.
Thank you.
I am tempted not to use the prefix, but at this particular moment, I should, to give honor to you. Well, I'm sure those of you watching might be eager to know who Yvonne Aki-SAWYERR is precisely. And so I'll give her the opportunity now to explain who she really is. Who are you?
Yvonne Aki-SAWYERR is the mayor of Freetown. Mm-hmm. And I think most viewers are past wanting to know who I am, okay, and really want to know now about what I'm doing. Mm. Who I am was a topic when they were making up their minds about voting. That's past. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to turn the question around a bit, mm-hmm, and begin to talk about what I'm doing. So
before we go there, let's just relax a bit. Probably you want to tell, well, I attended this school and this school, probably your background and the likes.
Okay.
Just for those who are watching to see this exquisitely adorning and beautiful lady seated in front of the camera this evening, would want to know who this Lati Dubideria is.
Okay. If you insist, because clearly you're insisting.
Indeed.
And I'll give you a few minutes, because really, as I said, I think we've had many conversations about who Yvonne Aki-SAWYERR is. Okay. You may be new to
new to our television, for our viewers, okay, on Freetown Television.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm a Freetonian. I was born in Freetown, okay, at the PCMH hospital, to be precise, okay, just about 50 years ago. And I went to St. Joseph Secondary School. Okay. I'm the second of 4 daughters of Professor and Mrs. Hector Morgan. And thank God I'm so blessed. My parents are still alive. I just actually had some time with them this afternoon, which is yeah, a real pleasure. I went to Fairbank College. I studied economics as my first degree, and then I did a master's in international relations at the London School of Economics. I then went on to train as a chartered accountant and worked in risk consulting for about 11 years. And my husband, I didn't mention, I'm married with 2 wonderful children, have an amazing husband, and have worked with him in our private business for the last 13 years or so, which is infrastructure development. And my engagement with the public sector, so as you can see from what I've just described, I have a strong private sector background. Investing in Sierra Leone, actually the company is building the Hilton Cape Sarah Hotel. Okay. My engagement outside of the private sector has been long-standing. During before the Ebola crisis, actually during the war years, I campaigned against the trade in blood diamonds with many other people, but went on to co-found an organization called SLWT, Sierra Leone War Trust for Children, which will be 20 years old in April. And over this almost 20 years, we started first with communities who were displaced in the war in the camps on Ross Road. Then when the war was over, we moved with a particular community, 28 villages, in an area called Thwamathinki in Bombali district, where we provided, invested in that community really, built a school, built a clinic, wells, farming projects, went on to work in Songo with ex-child soldiers, and most recently, fast-tracking to current day, we are supporting 50 Ebola orphans from the Waterloo area. And we now have a very famous director of SLWT. I've been the chairperson for many years and stepped down when I became mayor. But in terms of the the hands-on, day-to-day project management, we're blessed to have Valnora Edwin, who was formerly with Campaign for Good Governance, now as the project director for SLWT. So very much an organization which co-founded started to respond to the terrible atrocities of January 6th, and which is now continuing to impact the lives of children. And most recently, well, I say recently, was 4 years ago, I was involved with the Ebola outbreak. I was involved in as much as I stepped forward, put myself at the disposal of compatriots like so many others did, fought the war against Ebola. I mean, I'm wearing my poppy today, it's Poppy Day, and we were at the cenotaph, and when the bugle was sounding and the special sort of dead march that's played in honor of the soldiers, I found myself welling up with tears, because every time I hear that, I remember the end of the outbreak, which was on the 7th of November, 2015. And from there, I went on to lead the President's Delivery team with the recovery priorities. And it was during that process that I saw my city in a different light, particularly in respect of sanitation, which is my big passion, sanitation and the environment, and decided to run for office. And that brings us to where we are now. That decision was made in May 2017. No, could that be right? No, June 2017. The election was in March 2018, and in 2 days' time, I would have been the mayor for 6 months.
Wow. Congratulations in advance, Your Worship. All right, that's it. Little wonder why, the social razzmatazz and, academic credentials that surrounds her worship is very tight, I'll say. I'll implore of you watching and listening to the program now at this juncture to observe with me a moment of silence for those of whom had fought for this country, including the First and Second World War, and those who are still actively in service, serving this country diligently. Welcome back. This is Face the Nation on Freetown Television Network. 078-271-052 is the number to which you'd send your text and WhatsApp messages on any of what is being discussed in the program this evening. You are at Adlib. Now we commence the program officially. Her Worship, you would be 6 months in 2 days, you said. So, what have you done in the council so far since you assumed office?
Okay, thank you. I came into office with a plan which was initially to deliver against 3 components. The first one was quick wins, short-term urgent things that needed to be done. Okay. And the focus there was on flood mitigation and improving revenue, and also beautifying the CBD. So that was work stream 1. Work stream 2 was about internal processes of council. How does council work? Who are the staff of council? What are our assets? What are our projects? Understanding that. So that was work stream 2. Understanding that and trying to improve on efficiencies. And then work stream 3, which you might argue was the most important work stream, was building the 4-year plan for the transformation of Freetown. So 1, quick wins, 2, process improvements, 3, building the long-term plan. Because in order for you to deliver on a 4-year plan, it takes some work. You know, if you want to have a vision for 4 years, there's quite a bit of work you need to do up front to make that a reality. So that was my intention. And very pleased to report that on the first work stream, which was the quick wins, we've had a considerable amount of success. The flood mitigation work has been very successful. And in doing that, we've cleared over 6.2 kilometers of gutter, 33 waterways, 18 bridges around communities. And
all of which in Freetown?
Well, I'm the mayor of Freetown, so
okay.
I guess the work I do is in Freetown.
Central Business District?
No, not limited to the Central Business District. Clearly, if you're talking about flood mitigation, you really are talking about the city. And just so viewers are aware, the city, from Freetown's perspective in terms of Western Urban, for which I'm responsible, starts at Levuma Beach, goes on to Orogu Bridge, and then going up the hill, it goes up to Troy Champs Hospital and Hill Station.
Okay.
So that's the municipality. So the flood mitigation work has been successful, and I'm always really blessed, particularly by Krube community, where I was yesterday. Again, I was there with the laying foundation for a school. But Krube community it's always so exciting when you hear from the community members, them saying, we've had a flood every year for 15 years, and this is the first time we haven't had a flood. And I actually decided to check with the meteorological department, the weather people. I wanted to see, was it that the rain was less? And that's why I didn't have a flood, because you need to look at all the variables, when you're trying to determine the level of success that you want to attribute to something. And, in fact, the rainfall was less this year over last year, but not over the year before. And the reality is we've had flooding for the last 4 years. So we actually have seen an impact from the work done. The other area I mentioned was CBD beautification. And viewers if you've been in Freetown recently around the cotton tree, you'll see that we're beginning to really demonstrate that. So the Taylor Cummings Garden has had a facelift, and it's now very visibly an area of green. We've remodeled it. So there's clear paths, but most importantly, we've planted. And that theme of planting is one that you'll continue to see around the city. And we'll be moving that on. But then another area of CBD beautification is really in respect to moving traders from streets. It continues to be a challenge. And, traders who are listening, I'm going to break into Creole just to say, say we work on this together. We don't get one word for say we want to create jobs. So we really need for we city find. So what we're doing with the street traders is really saying we cannot have our central business district overrun with traders. It cannot be a marketplace. So we took time engaging with the Traders Council and agreed with them on specific streets which are designated trading streets, and then created a new one at Sitop Street so that we could clear 16 streets in the city, which include Gloucester Street, George Street, Shaka Stevens Street from Wilberforce to Sanders Street, includes Charlotte Street. And recently, in the last week, I've found myself on 3 occasions beginning to play some of the enforcement role myself. I've actually stopped my vehicle and put goods in my car and driven off with them, because we've really got to be clear that we're not trying to do harm. And I know it's difficult, but we have made provision, and we need to exercise that discipline. Freetown has to be an attractive place for people to come if we want tourists to visit us. So this is just part of it. So that's CBD beautification. And the third piece I mentioned was revenue mobilization. And a lot of great work is being done there. And can I just give a shout out, please, to my municipal trade teams, to Desmond, Thomas, and to Lebby, who've been doing a great work along with the council committee members. And I want to say the same with the sanitation team. I particularly want to mention Mr. Bundu and Sori Kamara. And when it comes to revenue, we've been really putting our skates on. There was an exercise done which was sort of ward to ward, door to door as a revenue drive about 2 months ago. And that was led by our Deputy CA, Mr. Bangali Mara. But over and beyond that, in the short term, because I will come on to what we're doing in the long term, but in the short term, the other thing which we've done, which I know is important, is the level of engagement of community members with local tax. So we've had all the tribal heads come in and take the tax books. We've had the Traders Council, we've had the Slum Dwellers Association, otherwise known as Federation of Urban and Rural Poor. So we've really brought community into that, and that's had a significant impact. But we've now gone a step beyond that, which is to automate the payment of local tax. So from last week and 2 weeks prior, we did AfriCell. Last week we did Orange. It's now possible by simply using your phone. AfriCell, it's *161#, and with Airtel Orange, it's #144#, and you can be in the comfort of your home and pay your local tax, and that will make a big difference. And I want to answer a question, because I get this very often. People say, well, how will you get your receipt? You'll get your receipt in the same way you get it when you pay EDSA. So when you pay your EDSA, your light bill, you get your receipt on your phone. It comes as a text message. It's the same with our money, with the local tax payment. It will come on your phone. And if you want a hard copy, if you choose to, you can print it from your phone. But if you want to get it from council, the minute you make a payment, we have an automatic record of it. We're holding records on our computers at council, and even offline, I get it on my phone. Okay. I can go in, click into the portal, and I'll see all the payments. So if somebody wants their receipt, you can come to council, we just take your telephone number, and we can print your receipt. So there's no concern about that. And what this does is, it's wonderful, because it gives you the opportunity to not just pay your 5,000 leones once. I've paid about 4 times. And I really want to encourage, at the Orange launch, the MC for the occasion actually encouraged everyone to pay for friends, pay for relatives, pay for neighbors, pay for children. So one person paid for 50, another person paid for 100. It just really gives us the chance, whether you're using AfriCell money or you're using Orange money, you now can pay your tax, but you can go beyond that. You can be a part of making a contribution to the transformation. Viewers have seen, and I wanted to make that point about, even before we launched the AfriCell and Airtel money systems for the local tax payments, even before we did that, we had already seen a 300% improvement in the amount of local tax collected. So in the whole of 2017, 43 million leones of local tax was collected. But in just these few months, from July to the launch, now end of October, we had already collected 135 million leones of local tax. And we are, as you see, clearing gutters, fixing bridges, clearing up gardens, improving the city. And when I come on to talking about the long-term plans, you'll see that we're doing even more, and we intend to do even more. So the idea of paying the local tax is because we all want a beautiful city, okay, but somebody has to pay for it, and the somebody is you and me.
Right, thanks very much. The program you're watching is Face the Nation. It's coming to you live on Freetown Television Network on channel 35, simulcast on frequency modulation 90.4 on Freetown Radio. I am Eustace Victor Jones. The number you could send your text or WhatsApp messages to on the program is 078-271-052. Now, a meeting with the Lord Mayor of Dublin on 23rd August 2018. Take us through. What was that about?
Well, I was in Dublin for the World Meeting of Families, which is an event that the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church attends, and there are side meetings at that event. one of those meetings was about women in leadership. So I was in Dublin to speak at that meeting about women and the role we can play in leading our cities, leading our communities. And given that I was in Dublin, it was appropriate to meet with the Lord Mayor of Dublin. So I had a meeting with him and some members of his team, which I had the opportunity to share that third work stream that I mentioned. Remember, I talked about number one being quick wins. We've talked about those. Number two being process improvements, which is more of an internal thing, so I won't focus on that. But the third area is where I would like to speak, and that is on the transformation plan for Freetown. So with the Lord Mayor of Dublin, it really was a courtesy call as I was in his city, but it gave me the opportunity to share with him where we want to go. So the Lord Mayor of Dublin is very different to an executive mayor. The Lord Mayor is a councillor because they have a rotation every year. So their mayors are actually councillors who rotate year on year. So it's more of a ceremonial figure. There are, of course, in the UK, executive mayors, such as the Mayor of Bristol, with whom I met last month as part of the Global Parliament of Mayors. And of course, the Mayor of London, who is also an executive mayor, which is what we have here in Freetown. An executive mayor, not a ceremonial figurehead, but somebody who actually wins an election specifically to be mayor in order to deliver an agenda. And I think that's a perfect point at which to share that agenda. So transform Freetown. I do believe and I do hope that more and more Freetonians have been seeing this in the media, particularly social media, on Twitter, WhatsApp, transform Freetown, hashtag transform Freetown. And what is this about?
Let me just interject mildly though, before we go there. Let's just focus mainly for now on your tours, and then on the second half of the program, we'll get into specifics and on, well, probably transforming Freetown and the likes. Concordia Summit in New York quite recently, another tour.
Okay.
Yes, what was that about?
So the Concordia Summit is organized by Open Society Foundations, which is the umbrella foundation for George Soros. Some viewers may be familiar with George Soros. He's a billionaire, but his background was that he's a son of Jewish refugees whose family members were killed during the Second World War. So he uses his wealth to promote causes which target people who are disadvantaged in any shape or form. So OSIWA, which people hear about here, is one of the Open Society Foundation organizations. And Open Society Foundation is the umbrella body. Every year, alongside the United Nations General Assembly meetings, there's something called the Concordia Summit, which is a gathering of 3,000–4,000 people. And this is all organized by George Soros, his Open Society Foundations. There's a gathering of these people. It includes heads of states. So Paul Kagame was there this year. Ivanka Trump, the daughter of Donald Trump, was actually in the session that I spoke at. And a wide range of personalities from around the world speaking over a 2-day period on matters of importance, global issues, running in parallel with the United Nations General Assembly. And I was invited to speak at the Concordia Summit, particularly on questions around migration. And this is migration from the context of knowing that we've got people, young people, children in fact also, moving from Sierra Leone out on the Temple Run in an attempt to find a better life. And the Open Society Foundation is particularly concerned about migration. Most of the narrative you will find is from the other side of the Atlantic. So you have mayors on the other side of the Atlantic who are concerned about receiving migrants in great numbers. So we all see the pictures of the boats landing onto the shores of Italy and onto the shores of Greece. So there's this conversation going on internationally about how how do we cope globally with this phenomenon, and how when migrants move into other cities, how can they be treated humanely? My angle, and that's the presentation that I made at that summit, is that as a mayor of a city, which although our numbers are less than, say, Nigeria or I think Nigeria or Gambia probably would be good comparisons. We certainly have, certainly in Nigeria, and I'll take back Gambia. I'm not sure of Gambia's numbers, but I know that our numbers are dwarfed by Nigerians. But still, it's a significant number of young people. We have about 5,000, according to IOM, we have about 5,000 young people who leave Sierra Leone every year. And those are estimates. It could be higher. And in the course of just last year, we had 1,056 who were brought back by IOM, rescued from camps, from prisons in Libya, in Kuwait. And then we also have our own government, you know, through the Ministry of Labor, also facilitating the return of some of these migrants. So I was speaking about what matters to me, which is giving our young people hope here so that they don't make that dangerous journey of Temple Run. Making sure we're providing skills, making sure we're providing job opportunities. So that's what I was doing at the Concordia Summit in New York in September.
Okay, and lastly, now before we take a short break, I quote from your directorate, Communications Directorate from the Freetown City Council. It reads, the Mayor of Freetown, Yvonne Aki-SAWYERR, has on 10th November 2018 handed the key of the Freetown city to Pope and Patriarch of the Greek Orthodox Church, Theodore II of Alexandria. What was that about? The key of the city? Do we understand?
Well, it's a symbolic gesture. So the Pope, who is the highest figure globally in the Greek Orthodox Church, was here in Sierra Leone for a state visit and came to the mayor's parlor. And the tradition in such instances is that when someone of that sort of stature visits your city, particularly in the case of the Greek Orthodox Church, which has over the last 10 years supported our city quite considerably, that you symbolically hand to them a key to the city, basically telling them, you're welcome, this is your home. And what we then did, the Pope, myself, and his team, was to, and of course the Councillor Murray, who is the councillor there in Crew Bay, was to move on to Crew Bay in order to lay the foundations for a new school. And that's one of 3 that I've actually done, school refurbishment, school rebuildings, one of 3 that we've actually done in the last 2 months. And when, again, as you say, we'll come on to that wider plan. But education is a big focus. And whenever we have an opportunity and the support of partners to enable us to improve on our education facilities, we really are very enthusiastic about working with them to make that happen. Of course, at a national level, the President's New Direction promise or flagship program is the provision of free quality education. So in complementing that, it's important that we're also looking at facilities that the children are learning in. And when we come to the plans, I'll talk a bit more about that.
Certainly, but before we go, all of these travelings you've made, are all of them geared towards generating revenue for the municipality in any way?
Yeah.
So what did we get from all of these visits?
Yes. So let me first mention something, and I think it's important because I've seen this on social media and I didn't respond, but now that I'm on air, I think I'll do that. I want to, you've mentioned 3, but I've traveled more, I've spoken at other events, and I will be doing more in the next couple of weeks. And I want to tell Freetonians that I have a policy. Unless whoever is inviting me to speak is paying for my ticket and my accommodation, I don't go. Because we need resources in Freetown. We need our money in Freetown. So my objective is to make sure that every trip is a net benefit to the city. So that's just the policy. It may change, But so far, that's the approach I've taken, and I think it's worked well.
Okay.
You know, I've actually had people say, sorry, there's no opportunity to pay, and I go, oh, sorry, I can't come, and then they find a way to pay.
Okay.
And with regards to what did I bring, you know, it's important not to think in that way. I don't go around with a begging bowl. That's not the spirit of the city. It's not the spirit of the nation, I believe.
Well, that's what we've been seeing over the years.
Well, and let's,
are you saying your
let's talk
administration
about
is different?
let's talk about having a different approach.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that we don't recognize the value of support and that we don't get support. But what I've found is that when I go out and I talk to people about what we are doing, that opens a conversation where people say, how can we help? And that's not an overnight thing.
Okay.
So it's not like, here's a check. I mean, we have had direct assistance, you know, I mean, coming out of conversations.
Okay.
So for example, little things and big things.
Okay.
We have World Bank projects which we're taking forward. I'll be going to Rwanda at the end of the month. That is for a Jeff meeting, Global Environment Facility meeting.
That's ticket also paid for?
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that will be having a conversation which will enable us to move forward with some applications for funding.
Right.
So it's not, can you just write me a check? Okay. It's more a question of building relationships, building credibility, getting people excited. One of the most exciting moments for me the other day was when I saw on Twitter, someone I've never met, writing on Twitter, I am in a conference at Addis talking about community participation in governance, and I'm thinking of Aki-SAWYERR in Freetown, hashtag transform Freetown. Now, what we're doing is getting international recognition of this very ambitious objective of transforming our city in 4 years. Right. And that is generating interest. So, for example, when we come to talk about the specifics, we've got supports to do a tax drive. And Mrs. Karimu, who's our head of valuations, is a big part of that, to improve on our property rate collection, our property rate system, and therefore collection. We've got a company in the UK, in Canada, who is paying, an institution, paying for that to be done, because they're excited about the prospect. And I didn't go to Canada.
You didn't?
No, we had a telephone conversation, we had a conference call, set out the plan. And you will find, actually, when you're clear about what you want to do, there is a lot of goodwill out there. Right. And that goodwill is international and it's also local. Okay. So I'm partnering, last week, I was in South Korea with the transport, major players in our transport sector, right. With the Director of Transport at the Ministry of Transport, the head of SLRS RTC, and the head of SLRSA, and the head of PMFU at the World Bank. Right. And we were talking about transport possibilities for Freetown. We subsequently had a meeting at the council on Friday, from which we've got clarity about which way we want to go, and partners and others will fall in, as well as the private sector, right. For that to happen. I
know the plans are many, and so on the second half of the program, we'll get to discuss all of them. But for now, let's have a short break.
Money with 1,990 loans, you can talk for 7 minutes on Orange and send 30 SMS daily. Dial star 88 # for start the enjoyment.
Orange. no day?
No.
When you tell me I go join this local SIM couple, from where I download this thing, and I'm not able to get access to my account. And I want to know so now we can.
Okay, so now this one is really simple. You don't go to the bank?
No.
Okay. Now go to the bank, let them update your account. Make sure say your telephone number they all know, because now the telephone number will make you get access to you go kill SIM couple.
Okay.
Where you dey go, make sure say you carry your bank ID card and also the mobile phone where you dey use, because now there we go download the app for you. Okay, so now you will not get account with me. What you need to wait for? Go na any of we branch and open account so you self go enjoy the local SIM couple.
Local Commercial Bank don't make life better for we all.
Welcome back. This is Face the Nation on Freetown Television Network on Channel 35 and on Freetown Radio on FM 90.4. I am Eustace Victor Jones. On the program today, we have a worship the mayoress of the municipality of Freetown, Yvonne Aki-SAWYERR, articulating plans for transforming the capital city, of course, and she said she'll be 6 months in 2 days, I think, 2 days, 2 days time. So what is our plans? Probably there are messages which you've got in the program. We'll shortly read most of them. But for time, I'll start with them. There are a series of questions here from our viewers and listeners alike. First one says, 6 months on, Madam Mayor, can you count on your success as 50% on your plans for the city? Marie from Lumley. Your revenue collection seems to be very well increased. What is your plans to use it for the people in the municipality? Don't let it be like the previous mayor, to bring musicians in the country. James from Parimba Road. Hello, Mr. Presenter. Many thanks for this program. Hope the mayor has bought in plans for the recruitment of personnel at the FCC. Aisha Banks. What is the plan for the Sewa Ground Market and the City Hall building under construction? Balu from Regent. Good to hear from the mayor of Freetown City. I must say that you have been tremendous since you were elected. All the best in your undertakings. From Mystic at Bozak. 50%. Would you rate your work?
Yeah, so you remember that I said I had 3 work streams. Quick wins, definitely. Tick, we did that.
So how many percent would you rate?
I would rate that at over 80%.
Over
definitely.
80.
For the quick wins, because we were doing the CBD beautification, flood mitigation, and revenue. Revenue has gone up tremendously. Flood mitigation was very successful. No major flooding this year. CBD beautification is probably where we've been weakest. But you know, these things take time, and we're working on it. The next question is, what are your plans? And this is what I've been dying to get to. What are my plans? So the plans are described under 4 clusters: resilience, human development, healthy cities, urban mobility. Resilience, human development, healthy cities, urban mobility. So that's 4 clusters. Each of those clusters is related to 11 priority sectors. So 4 clusters, 11 priority sectors. And what we've done, what we've been working on over the last, I would say we started that process about 3 months ago, is setting up multi-stakeholder working groups for each one of those 11 priority sectors. And those groups comprise government, central government, development partners, NGOs, and social players. And let me quickly tell you the 11 sectors. So under resilience, we have 3 sectors: environmental management, urban planning and housing, and revenue mobilization. What we've done for each of those sectors is we've gotten everyone who's working in the city in that sector around the table. And in order for us to do that, we have had to go to the heads of organizations or to groups. So for example, I'd like to use this opportunity to thank His Excellency the president, retired Julius Madabio, because when it came to the government side, I would have had to go to so many different ministries for environment, to go to lands, to go to EPA, for health, the Ministry of Health, and so on. So he very kindly consented to convene a special cabinet in August, where he chaired, the vice president was there, the chief minister was there, the ministers and deputy ministers, and I was able to present to them the 4 clusters and 11 priority sectors, and in one sitting ask all the relevant MDAs to join us on the relevant priority sectors. With the development partners, did the same thing. Brought in all the UN agencies, the World Bank, the EU, the MRU, everyone. Embassies, Chinese embassy, everyone came together in one meeting, and we presented the plan. And when I say the plan, we presented the plan to build the plan. You see what I mean? Explain to them that we need you on board so that when we're coming up with a plan, we are all in agreement. And we don't have...
So there is no plan for now, it's just a carcass?
No, there is a plan. I'm just telling you the process. And then the third group of people which we did that with was the NGOs, to ensure that we don't have this business of people going off in silos, one NGO doing this and somebody else duplicating it and repeating it. So we had over 100 NGOs come to the office and we presented to them. So that was August. Where we are now, from August to now, we've been working steadily. And I'm pleased to report that we've now had what we call our intro meetings and our planning labs for each of those 11 priority sectors. So for each of the sectors, I can now say to Freetonians, I won't name them all because it'll take us some time, but I can tell you that we now have a target, or 2 targets as the case may be, for some of the sectors, and the initiatives which we're going to execute for the targets. So that itself has taken time because you need to work with data, understand exactly what's going on in the sector. So we have that now. And I will just share quickly some of them so listeners get a sense of what the plans are. And I want people to understand the difference between the short-term things, which we've done and we're doing, that's ongoing, and then the longer-term, more fundamental, our expression is transform Freetown. When you transform something, you need to have significant change. You know, that is the definition of transform.
Against when would we expect to?
Against my term. I mean, I'm here for
the
4
end
years.
of your tenure.
Yes. So the idea is the work we're going to do over the 4-year period.
All right.
And so to give you a flavor, as I was saying, resilience has environmental management. Let me give you one of the targets there. The target is to make all 48 wards more resilient and able to prevent and respond to any sort of natural disaster. One of the initiatives within that is for us to ensure that we increase by 50% the vegetation cover in the city.
How would that be possible?
What do you mean, how is it possible? By planting trees, by planting shrubs, by planting grass.
Where?
So why don't you wait until the Transform Freetown Forum, which will be on the 24th of January, where we'll go into detail for the whole city on each one. So that was one example of environment. Let me move down. So from an environment, you go, the next one is urban planning and housing. And there our target on the housing side is at least 5,000 new housing units for Freetown. And that's for Freetown, not necessarily in Freetown. And then on the planning side, we also have a plan around adopting a zonal plan. Some work's been done on it already, a Freetown zonal plan, which actually sets the city out into zones where you've got regulations about how and what goes on in each zone. Revenue mobilization is our 3rd sector under resilience. And there, the target, this is something that all Freetonians need to be interested in. Our target for revenue mobilization, the first one is to increase 5 times, a factor of 5, our tax revenue in the city. And this one is not by 2022, but by 2020.
So how much?
5 times. So last year, the tax revenue, we're expecting it to go now to 35 billion. So a five-fold increase by 2020. And our non-tax revenue, we expect to increase threefold by 2020. Why is this so important, and why is this target earlier than the 4 years? Because to do the things we want to see in our city, we have to pay for it. And this is not just a question of do we increase tax, but how can we be more efficient in the way we collect tax? There are many homes in the city who aren't paying property rates. And also our tariff is 20 years old, the tariff structure. So there's a lot of work that's being done, and the Ministry of Finance is part of that working group, the local government finance division. So that's resilience.
Which is why there's a text here from James on Parimba Road. He's saying, how will these monies be used? Wouldn't it be used to bring musicians, like he quoted him, previous mayor?
Right. So I just mentioned what we're going to do on the environment. I've talked about housing. I've talked about planning. And if I go on to the next cluster, which is human development, our sectors there are education, skills development, job creation, and persons with disability.
Education.
And let me give you, education. Okay. And with education, our target is around improving monitoring performance of teachers and examinations, really strengthening the performance management systems in the municipal schools, but also safeguarding the children. That's another target.
So municipal schools are under the purview of the Freetown City Council?
Yes, that's why they're municipal schools. We have 378 schools, primary to JSS, and we are really concerned. The first one is about the quality of what goes on in the schools. The second one is about safeguarding pupils at school, and that safeguarding is both physical, which means we need to ensure that our schools meet health and safety standards, and that speaks to the buildings, it speaks to the the facilities inside, chairs, tables, but it also speaks to questions of abuse, sexual predatory behaviors within schools, making sure that our children are safe. When it comes to skills development, our targets there are to ensure that we provide 20,000 young people with market-driven skills and 15,000 with adult literacy, functional literacy, numeracy, and literacy skills for 15,000 young people. When it comes to job creation, the target there is to create 7,000 jobs within the tourism sector. Right. And what does that mean? It means we've got to ensure that we're really making Freetown encouraging tourists to come to our city, so that the knock-on effect, because this is indirect, the knock-on effect is that more hotels get built, more restaurants get built, more jobs are created, because you've got artists coming and performing here. Not that we're going to bring artists, but for example, this week we have EcoFest. KME Multimedia is bringing in EcoFest. We will want to capitalize on activities like that, because when someone comes here for a program like that, if they look at the city and they enjoy their time here, they will come here on vacation. Right. And when they come, they will spend their money. And that's how jobs are created. And persons with disability, we want to work with them to ensure that we actually are providing opportunities for them to be independent in their lives. The third cluster is healthy cities. Here we're looking at health, water, and sanitation. And let me just give you one. I'm so excited about our targets for health. I'm so excited. And like I said, we don't set the targets. I'm not a health professional. I'm not an environmentalist. We bring in the experts from around the city, from the local government, from the central government, from development partners, from NGOs, from communities. So when we're talking about housing, we bring the slum dwellers. When we're talking about health, we had a community healthcare worker, as well as doctors from our hospitals, WHO, some of the NGOs, and they have set a target, which I think is fantastic. Initially, when they had their first meeting, the target was set at 10%. And last week, when they were finalizing their initiatives, they unanimously agreed to increase the target. And the target, first of the health targets, is to reduce by 40% the maternal mortality rate in Freetown. So 40% fewer women should die in childbirth in Freetown. That's the target that's been set for Freetown for the next 4 years. Okay. The second target is to have 20% increase in the adoption of healthy behaviors to reduce non-communicable diseases. So things like hypertension, diabetes, these are all things which behavior can actually reduce the incidence of the disease. So
behavior.
That's your behavior.
How?
Exercise, not smoking. Those are things, your diet. So what one of the initiatives that the health professionals have decided on in order to meet that initiative, in that target, is to introduce what we are going to call Healthy Freetown Days. More on this as they work on it. But the general gist is that probably once a month, there'll be a day when it's a Healthy Freetown Day in the city. You'll have screening for blood pressure. We'll have stations around the city. We'll have activities, jogging, running, cycling as a city in order for us to promote the healthy behaviors that will help save lives.
Junior Doctors Association quite recently organized a sit-back action for poor conditions of service. Are you aware, with all of these plans, that the country is, well, lack of medical equipment and machinery to actually take care of people here? I was actually expecting you probably, I thought you wanted to say that you'll be using some of these monies to buy equipment for hospitals, rather than attitude change.
Well, you'll be surprised to know that or you shouldn't be surprised to know, I think prevention is better than cure. What you want to do is to actually prevent people from getting sick, as opposed to saying you'll deal with the sickness. That's why public health is so important. Changing attitudes is actually more effective and more life-saving than waiting till the person is sick. Just take Ebola, for example. It was attitudes that saved lives, not treatment. Obviously, treatment saved as well. But you ended the outbreak by changing attitudes.
Right,
and you can actually save lives when it comes to some forms of cancer, diseases like diabetes, even things like mental health, which is one of our targets, and substance abuse. These are all things which are attitude. And that's what the health professionals have said. And I think I've said quite a lot of things already where you can see where money will go. So, you know, we've talked about education, we talked about the schools infrastructure, we've talked about the environment, we've talked about planting, we've talked about housing, we've talked about persons with disability, we've talked about making sure we have skills facilities available to young people.
I understand.
So I think you should be recognizing that you are hearing where the money's going.
I understand.
And just kind of acknowledging that, that would be good.
Okay. I understand. I do understand. Actually, the plans are lucrative. I know what. Let's take it limb by limb. Now, you spoke about education. Are you aware that most of these municipal schools are very dilapidated?
You know, when you're fixing a
plan... Are you aware?
When you're fixing a plan...
Are you aware that these schools are dilapidated?
What's your name again?
Eustace.
Eustace. Eustace.
My questions are very precise.
No, but your questions are also repetitive.
Are you aware that the schools are dilapidated?
That's why we have the plan.
The plan, we have been planning in the country for the past few decades. We've been planning.
Eustace.
Little have been seen.
Eustace, you know, I think it's actually, I know you're trying to be smart. And I appreciate that
these are minor questions.
No. But we have spent 3 months bringing in the principals of schools, bringing in the proprietors of schools.
Yes, teachers are grumbling that their pay is very little.
I am not responsible for, I'm telling you, what the council is responsible for.
That's why I know you're capable of transforming these schools because they fall under your supervision as a council.
What you need to understand is council, there are 2 things I want to say. Number 1, your question, the reason I was pushing back on your question, let me explain to you. The reason I was pushing back on your question is because it's almost like stating the obvious. I said we started off, it took us 3 months because we did an assessment of what is wrong. When you fix a plan and you set a target, what you're seeking to do is to fix what is wrong. So to ask me, am I aware the schools are dilapidated?
It's a rhetorical question. It has an intended purpose.
It's a rhetorical question.
So when do we see these schools being refurbished?
So, Eustace, one of the things which is I've always said is that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Certainly.
We're going through a process. We've taken 3 months to get to a point of bringing all the stakeholders in one place.
Right.
Systematically going through week by week, sector by sector, agreeing on targets, agreeing on initiatives that those targets will be met, will use to meet those targets.
Right.
What is happening now is all of those working groups are continuing their work. They're going to the next level.
Okay.
They've said this is an initiative. So for example, we talked about an initiative like the Healthy Days, Healthy Freetown Days. But you also have initiatives like the Cleanest Zone in Freetown competition, or in environment, I mentioned the one about the covering the city, improving vegetation cover by 50%. Those teams are now sitting down to work out their outline plans. They'll work out an outline plan for the 4 years, focusing on the first 12 months, starting in January. They'll have milestones. So a milestone tells you when we've done something significant in the journey to actualizing the plan. Those milestones are documented for every single one of our initiatives. In January, on the 24th of January, we'll have what we call the Transform Freetown Forum at the Miata Conference Center, where we'll present to the city, to everyone, every target, every initiative, the outline plans, the milestones. Those milestones will be on our Facebook page, on our website, and every month we'll report to the city where we are against our projected milestones. You need to realize that if there's a tendency to say, when's it going to be done? When's it going to be done? All you're doing is creating unhelpful expectations. Let's do it properly. What we want is to, at the end of 4 years, see a transformative difference in our city. Let's do it well. We are being very, very transparent in the planning process, and we'll be transparent in the implementation process.
The issue about this is that
allowed to happen is to take an unprofessional, knee-jerk kind of making news attitude or reaction to something which needs to be done properly.
Indeed. Well, certainly, I'm sure you would agree with me that people want to know.
And that's why we're sharing. And that, if you go on our website, so we have a website, it's www.fcc.gov.sg.
Are you so aware that...
If you go to the website now, you will find this information that I'm sharing with you. We're on Facebook, and I know most people, a lot of people are on Facebook, and that's Freetown City Council. But we also regularly share our stories and updates by WhatsApp. And
as for those who are social media friendly.
Yes, and most Freetonians are, Eustace. Most Freetonians are. I've come to
old
realize
people also?
That. Old people also. My parents are 82 and 76, and they are both on WhatsApp.
They have the opportunity.
Facebook.
They have the privilege.
True. So at community level, we are also very much engaged in communities. We have our counselors in communities, and we are going around. Let me tell you something that we did in August to September. From the middle of August, so I think it was the 3rd week of August, through to the 3rd week of, so it took about a month. We went to every single ward, not just to the ward, but to the zones. We have 310 zones in Freetown within the 48 wards. And every single zone, we went to the communities. We went to a community center. It was all agreed, arranged, and people were aware. And we took our 11 sectors and we asked communities, what do you think about service delivery at community level as it stands now? And we're asking you to rate 1, where 1 is terrible, to 10, where 10 is excellent, against 3 questions: availability of that service, acceptability, so the quality of the service, and accessibility of the service. And then we aggregated those results. We brought them back, so at zones, we brought the zones together at ward level, validated it again with the ward, at a ward level meeting, fed that information into all of these technical working groups that I've just described. And I can tell you that the feedback was very negative. Overall, communities fed back to us that as it stands now, across the 11 sectors, and we made some slight adjustments. We put in markets and recreational and community space, some things which are really germane to communities. The rating, we did not get for any one of the sectors at an aggregate level a rating as high as 5 over 10. So that tells you that citizens, residents are currently dissatisfied with what they've been getting. And this is very important feedback into the planning process.
All right.
So it really guides because it's ward by ward. So even when it comes to where should facilities, where should interventions be made, we have that information. So it's not just WhatsApp and social media. We are very much talking to people as well and working through stakeholder groups like the Traders Council, like the Slum Dwellers Association, like the tribal heads. We have bodies in the city which are, and Interreligious Council. You know, we have bodies in the city which are really channels for communication at all sorts of levels.
All right. In Freetown, previously, we had dumping site located in most areas where people will converge to dump their refuse. But these empty lands have now been occupied, they have been built on, and they have been converted to private properties. It seems the council is turning a blind eye to all of these. Is that the case?
No.
And so when
is the short answer.
So how will we retrieve all of these lands?
Okay, so what the council is doing is we're going through, you remember I mentioned a second work stream? So the first one was the quick wins, the second one was processes, what the council has, assets. So we have a team, we have a committee of council called the Asset Management Committee. And I've asked them to systematically go from east to west across the city and actually document with our estates management team, document all council assets. And as they're documenting them, we are also actually understanding what the legal status is. So that exercise is underway because we need to ensure that we retrieve council assets, because assets serve a purpose. Assets are there in order for you to optimize them to generate revenue, again, for one single reason, to be able to deliver quality services to the residents of Freetown. That's why we're here, to improve the lives of Freetonians.
Okay, right. So now, also, I'm sure you are aware about this, since we don't have much time left on the program. We even have some messages, but before we read these ones, I just want to ask, we've been complaining, or market women in the country have been complaining that they don't have places to sell. Now, previously, you engaged street hawkers on the Operation Pushback. It was an ingenious mechanism to beautify the city, to get people off the street from selling. But where do they go to?
Okay, one of the questions which you asked from a caller, and we didn't
the
get
Sewer Grounds,
and so
yes.
perhaps I can quickly answer that.
You should, yes.
Right, so Sewer Grounds was a joint venture between council and NASIT. But NASIT were the major owners, so they're 75% and council's 25%. So I recently had a meeting with NASIT management. It took a while because they were trying to get, they had a new DG and he needed to get up to speed with everything. But we've met and I've been reassured by him and NASIT, the NASIT management team, that they are going to work for us to complete that market. However, the time frame that they're giving is actually quite a long way out. I understand that there's some legal challenges with the property.
So what's the time frame?
And they're saying it's not likely to be within the next 12 months. So yeah, so it's quite a way out. So what we've done as council, we've put out an expression of interest for the construction of 7 markets in the CBD, or CBD and wider. So those include King Jimmy Market, Dovecote, Petersbrook, Wilberforce. So we've actually had responses to the expression of interest, and what we're working on now is the RFP to take that process forward. Building markets is one of our pressing priorities. Somebody also asked about the City Hall, so if I could quickly just say a word on that. City Hall is going up as the new home for Freetown City Council. It's under construction and it seems to be more or less on target to complete in 2020. It's going to present for us both a new home and an income opportunity, because as I understand it currently, there's probably going to be 2 floors in excess of council's requirements.
Okay.
And that means we can rent them out to other businesses, which will generate revenue for the council. So that's where we are with City Hall.
All right, so let me read some of these messages. The first one reads, "Good afternoon, Her Worship. Please, we have piles of dirt at the Dozak field. It has been there since the first Saturday of the month. It is very hazardous to the community, especially the children."
Yeah.
The other one says, "Tell us more about Operation Pushback. It is not working effectively. Why not the construction of the Sour Ground Market?" Aliu from Hastings. "Any plans for relocating the Krube community and the slum community in the city?" Jane from Freetown. These are the questions.
Okay.
You would want to answer these questions.
Dwazak, I'm really sorry about Dwazak. So this is one of the challenges we have. Yeah, I was not available. I was actually ill on National Cleaning Day. I came back the night before, and it appears that there were not enough vehicles. And we do have, not just in Dwazak, I'm afraid, but a lot of
several other places, yeah.
Yeah, and so council is then left because we only have 3 vehicles.
Which is why I wanted to ask you, why didn't you partake in the previous cleaning exercise?
I was sick.
The council, I mean.
The council was there. The council
It wasn't
there.
well represented.
How do you know? I mean, how are you saying that? The council was
Trucks
there.
were provided by the council. It seemed these dirts have been lying in the streets.
Sorry, Eustace, get the facts right. Council has 3 trucks of its own. The trucks
Only-
that are used, only 3 trucks. The trucks that are
Well,
used...
that answers the question.
Exactly. So there is a whole other question about the management of trucks on National Cleaning Day. They are not under council. So please be clear. With regards to the waste, I just want to say to the community, I'm very sorry. One of the challenges we have is that when this waste gets left after National Cleaning Day, it then takes us as council a very long time because of our limited resources to be able to mop it all up. But because it's happening all over the city. But I am actually personally aware of Dwazak, and I understand one of our trucks broke down. We are trying to get new trucks. The Chief Minister has assured us as well that he's in the process of getting trucks in nationally, and some of those trucks will come to City Council, which will help. But we do have a challenge with what happens post-cleaning day when there aren't enough vehicles on the cleaning day. With regards to Operation Pushback, yes, it has been a challenge and it's an ongoing thing. We have marshals who are out there. When you look at a problem, it's often important to understand what is the root cause. When you have a city where over 70% of people who are earning a living are doing so as traders, it's a challenge. So in many ways, pushback, move here, move there, what we really need to be investing in, and that's why I'm so excited about our job creation strategy, as well as the work that's being done by the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development, and the Ministry of Trade, where there's a strong focus on creating, diversifying the economy, because we need jobs. That's the bottom line. We can't have everybody as a trader, because if you do, it's impossible to contain everyone in markets. But to your question, because I think the person asked about sour grounds, I already answered that it's probably a year away, and that we're also trying as best as possible to fast track the building construction of additional markets. And those RFPs will be out before Christmas for sure. And then someone asked about Krube and
relocating the slums, yes.
Yeah. So we're looking at in our priority sector, urban planning and housing. We're really taking a very open view, and Krube community are at the drawing board with us. I'm really looking to see what do we do. A combination perhaps of upgrading and relocation. But as I had mentioned earlier, we've got the targets now. We've set a target about housing units. We've set a target about zonal plans and adoption of regulations. what we are now doing is working with the experts, and you know, you asked earlier on, when you go on these visits, what do you get back? So let me give you an example of what we get back. So in July, I had the honor of being invited to be one of 40 mayors from around the world to be part of something called the Bloomberg Harvard Cities Initiative. Mayor Bloomberg was the 3-time mayor of New York City, and Harvard Business School, Harvard Kennedy School, are world-renowned graduate schools. And they came together to create an initiative to support city leaders. And they had one last year, and it was principally American mayors. And this year they opened it, so they invited 40 mayors from around the world, and I'm the only African of them, so quite an honor. And going to that convening in New York in July, one of the things that came out of it was, what would you as a mayor, and this is asked of every mayor, what is your priority? So I said my priority is housing. So we're actually having experts from the Bloomberg team come to Freetown to work with us as we really innovatively consider how can we find solutions, and we're particularly looking at our slum upgrades. So these are the sorts of things that we're doing, where you're engaging internationally in order to bring not just, you know, here's some money, but really here are brains, here are resources, here are networks, here are other world-class institutions who are prepared to work with you.
All right. Now we've come to the end of the program, but conclusively, lastly, let me ask you this. People don't pay tax in Sierra Leone. You've launched the AfriCell and Orange Money, where people should be paying their taxes electronically. It is a laudable venture, electronically well sophisticated, but would they pay? And how would you get them to pay?
Let me ask you the question. Have you paid?
I've paid about 5 times now.
Good, excellent. So what I'd like you to realize is that just as you've done, Eustace, more and more Freetonians are also getting on board and realizing they voted for change. They voted for Transform Freetown, for your community, for your progress, for your Freetown. And they did that knowing that we needed to pay our way for this to happen. So I am confident that the residents of this city are really keen and ready to pay their taxes. But to make it even easier, you know, we're working with a number of institutions to partner so that we have gateways. So we're exploring the possibility, and I won't say too much now because I have a meeting with one of those groups tomorrow, and I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. But you'll find there'll be some things that you won't be able to do in the city if you can't demonstrate that you paid your local tax. We're engaging different bodies where we can say the tax is the gateway for you to access this service or that service. But fundamentally, I actually think, and I want to thank Freetonians now, we've seen at council, and I can't speak without mentioning Kangoma, who is our head of local tax. And we've seen at council a tremendous improvement and increase already, even before the mobile systems came on board. So I'm confident that we'll see more. This is not Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr, Mayor of Freetown City Council even, taking on the challenge of transforming Freetown. This is Freetonians deciding that we want our city to go back on the map. We want to be proud of our city, and we know that doesn't happen by the air coming down and making it happen. It happens when we all put our shoulders to the wheel. We all get involved. We all take on our own civic responsibility and pay our taxes. I'm confident it's going to happen because I believe in the people of Freetown.
All right. Unreserved gratitude conveyed to you, your worship, for honoring our invitation here at Freetown Television Network. And I wish you well in your future endeavors as the mayoress, as I like to say.
You do.
Of the Freetown municipality. But it has been interactive. Many thanks to those of you who watched and listened simulcast to the program on Freetown Radio 90.4. I have been Eustace Victor Jones. I was having her worship, the mayoress of the municipality of Freetown, Yvonne Aki-Sawyerr. Many thanks to my producer, Josephus Olu Mama. And of course, those of you text, of course, asking questions relating to the beautification and transformation of the lovely Freetown. Face the Nation returns again on next week Sunday at exactly 5 p.m. Until then, I have been Eustace Victor Jones, wishing you a pleasant Sunday. Bye.